there have been recent confirmations that Phase 4 is going to be a more cosmic phase for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And with recent heroes and stuff coming out, it definitely seems like that's more than a possibility, with heaps of storylines being able to be adapted for that and stuff. But I'm going to take the time to talk to you about my predictions for what else may be in store after Infinity War Part 2. What's up, guys? Okay, so first and foremost, obviously, I'm gonna start with established characters and how they can factor into further the MCU, whether or not we get more Avengers movies as such. We may split off into new team-based films for crossovers and stuff, or it may just be that a character shows up in this film and then in that one and so on, and they just share the universe from here on out. So obviously, I'm going to start with our very own cosmic side that is already established with Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has been confirmed. We definitely are getting it. And I have a couple of predictions that I think it's going to be about, considering that for the most part, family seems to be a big part of it, of its sort of premise. In the first one, we deal with Gamora, who Thanos is her adoptive father, Nebula her adoptive sister, and it's the whole sort of family over whatever else. In the second one, Peter learns who his father is, and then has the whole, he's my biological father, but you're who raised me, and then Gamora ends up telling him that he's always had a family with the Guardians, and so on and so forth. And so I think family's going to come back into it. And the way I think they're going to be able to do this is to look at Rocket Raccoon's background and then sort of develop a bit more on Drax's side of things. Groot is just sort of Groot. He's just sort of there without having too much actual dialogue to tell us about himself. We can't really go into much about him. He has sort of a history in like the 60s or 70s in the comics, then was sort of non-existent for a little while, and then was refreshed, I guess, and rewritten into the modern Guardians of the Galaxy stories. So there's sort of a gap there where we can't really draw from anything, but we can still sort of draw on the backgrounds of Rocket and stuff, which we haven't really sort of looked at, and it gives us the ability to introduce the, I can't remember what his name is now, High Evolutionary. I knew I would remember it eventually. The High Evolutionary, who I sort of, and obviously this is taking into account that Marvel will make changes to certain characters and stuff to fit them into stories, like they did with Ego the Living Planet, who is neither Star-Lord's father or a Celestial in the comics, and yet they made him both in the movie. But then again, it also sort of sets up the fact that Peter Quill's dad is so full of himself that his name is literally Ego, and he's built himself into an entire planet. So, anyway, I digress. My predictions and theories, without actually having anything substantial at all to go on, is that we will end up on Half-World, which is Rocket's sort of place of birth, I guess you could say, where he was experimented on and pulled apart and put together and pulled apart and put together, and that he was experimented on by the High Evolutionary, who may well have been working for Thanos to try and create warriors. That hence we have Nebula, who has been enhanced with cybernetic enhancements and whatnot in a similar way to Rocket. So this could be that he was the one who was experimenting on different life forms to try and find the perfect weapon for Thanos to use in conquering the galaxy. And obviously, even before finding out that to challenge the humans is to court death, he was looking for Infinity Stones because he sent Loki to get one from Earth, thinking that it would just be walk in and just take it. So he's obviously been looking for them for a while. He needed a weapon for that. He creates them on Half-World. My theory also is that Half-World will be Half-World from the comics, half wildlife, half urban city, and like purely split down the middle, like Moon of Endor and Ewoks and stuff on one side and Coruscant on the other, just to give you a visual reference for that. And that planet was originally, before the High Evolutionary came and whatnot, was originally Drax's home planet. We don't know how long Drax has been off trying to find Thanos, but we do know that he's been trying to do that because Thanos killed his wife and child, and we also know that Drax recognizes the species that Rocket is and that they used to roast them over a fire pit. So it's highly possible that Rocket actually is part of that species and therefore is from the same planet and just further along on the timeline where he was born and they were whatever. That therefore means that we have the possibility for reworking Moondragon into this whole thing and giving us a new cosmic hero slash villain. She could start out as being like a Nebula type character, like works for the bad guy, figures out, oh hang on, that's my dad, switches sides, and she could have her powers that she has in the comics through the cybernetic enhancements done to her by the High Evolutionary, because she's just existed on this planet ever since Drax has gone off to avenge her, and therefore not knowing that she's actually alive, this could be a big revelation. We could also have Lila come into it, who is an associate of Rocket's. She is referenced in his mugshot scene as one of his known associates, and she is from Half-World. She's an otter, and I believe in the comics they have a bit of a romantic relationship with each other, so that's entirely possible as well. And then obviously, without the backing of Thanos, who will by this point have been stopped in Avengers 4, the Guardians of the Galaxy will be able to quite easily overpower High Evolutionary come the film's third act. And that is my theory for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think it is entirely possible. Having now said it out loud, I actually have quite a few substantial in-movie things to base that on. So it doesn't seem entirely out of the realm of possibility. I think, honestly, it would be amazing to see. Then, of course, we'll have Adam Warlock is going to show up somewhere, whether it's his own film or in that film. You know, there's a high possibility that he will also come in at the request of the Sovereign in order to seek their vengeance on the Guardians. Figure out that, you know, the Guardians, while they did betray the Sovereign, are actually out there risking their lives to save not only their galaxy, which we know is the Andromeda Galaxy from the different coordinates that they have for certain things in the movies, but also the Milky Way, because they came back to save Earth. So, yeah, he'll figure out that, oh, these guys have saved not only this universe, this galaxy twice, but they've saved other galaxies as well. They can't be entirely as horrible as the Sovereign think they are, and therefore join them in the fight against the High Evolutionary, who I'm pretty sure has some pretty epic powers. So yeah, then we'll have Captain Marvel as well. It's entirely possible that because the Skrulls will be introduced there, that we'll have a Kree-Skrull war film, maybe, and she'll have to try and find some sort of a truce between them or defeat the two big bads of either side or whatnot. So we could get a Kree Skrull war film there, potentially. Otherwise, there's a whole heap of characters that could appear in a second Captain Marvel film. I'm not entirely sure what the first one's going to be, so I'm going to have to hold my predictions until I see that, and get a bit more of a understanding of what they're doing with that character. And then, of course, that brings me to the Fox Disney deal, which will give us Fantastic Four and X-Men. In X-Men Apocalypse and the new X-Men Dark Phoenix film, which comes out this year, we will be dealing with the Phoenix Force, obviously, which is, in the comics, a cosmic entity that just takes over Jean's body and her powers, amplifies them to insane proportions. So if we were going to continue dealing with that cosmic force in the MCU, we could sort of continue with the same actors, whatnot, just throw a MCU sticker at the front of it. Would mean we don't need an origin story, because everything First Class onwards would therefore be Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity, with the other three and Wolverine Origins not being continuity. Because I like to think that the Wolverine would take place, obviously it comes after he's released, but it would probably be, I don't know, I'd have to figure out the timeline there for where that would fit. Anyway, yeah, so we could deal with that and have a Phoenix 5 film, which would allow the Avengers to sort of come in a little bit, and then that would also mean that we get an Avengers vs. X-Men movie, which everyone has been clamoring for since forever. But it would also allow us that. Cyclops' father is a character named Corsair, who is actually a space pirate, so could potentially show up as a leader of a Ravager group in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and they just call themselves the Starjammers because that's just what they want. The only problem I can see there is that the character Razor is in Iron Man. He's that guy that had the weird sort of scar over one eye after Tony escaped. That's Razor. So was he then abducted by aliens, and is he going to appear in that, or is it going to be an actual alien with a weird red ponytail? I think it's red. I don't know. He's not really a major character, so anyway. So that they could appear potentially. I like the idea that they would retcon them as a group of Ravagers. Potentially one that's sort of estranged, like Yondu's group was, and therefore they have sort of just set up their own code that they go by, and they don't really talk to Stakar and Alita and Martin X and all the other ones that are like the main group, who were the original Guardians of the Galaxy. There's that as well, which is entirely possible. So there's a whole heap of films that could come from that. And then, of course, the Fantastic Four. With their track record over at Fox, a new origin story is probably likely, although they could just do what they did with Spider-Man, make some sly references to the other films' sort of major moments, at least where saving the day is concerned. I mean, Tony Stark shows us a bit that is reminiscent of a scene from Amazing Spider-Man 2 where Peter catches a car from crashing into a bus. So, and that's the scene at the beginning of the film where he's trying to catch the radioactive isotope, whatever it is. So that lets us know that yes, these films existed. He's been out there doing this for a while. it's still a homemade suit, and then Tony comes in and goes, I'm going to upgrade you, here's a new suit. And then, yeah. So they could just do that, although with how sort of hated those films are in the wider community, I personally don't mind them. They're not great films, you know, but I don't mind them. If I'm, bored and haven't seen it recently, I might decide, yeah, I'll put that on. But it's not a film that I'm actively going to grab from my collection and put on. So I sort of think an origin of sorts is more likely, and that being that they may have gotten trapped in the negative zone. Maybe you could have it that they have a small cameo in a Doctor Strange film, and he's able to travel to the negative zone, which is a different dimension, kind of like in the 2015, the reboot one, where they went to a different dimension. Potentially Doctor Strange went and pulled them all out. Obviously you would retcon it that Sue went with them, or you could even just make it that it was him who allowed them to travel back because the door wouldn't close on one of them, so it wasn't safe to travel back, and he rescued them or whatever. And you could retcon certain things. It's just whether or not Marvel would want to do that or just make their own origin. But I definitely think a trapped in the negative zone thing is entirely possible. It would explain why we haven't seen them, considering that Reed is supposed to be like one of the smartest guys in the world, and Doctor Doom is not only a great scientist but is learned in mystical arts, which is why I think it's more possible that Doctor Strange will have some sort of a part in either their solo film, and Doctor Strange will have a cameo, or they'll appear in a Doctor Strange film, and he'll need to work with Victor Doom to do whatever. The obvious problem there is that would mean that Doctor Strange would have then worked with two villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and how many times are you going to work with a villain before you realise that the people you're hanging out with probably aren't the right types? It's the only problem there. So yeah, that's kind of it for my predictions for Phase 4. Obviously we're going to get another 2 Spider-Man films, probably under 2 for Doctor Strange, and 2 for Black Panther, since trilogies just seem to be the way of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then we'll get 1 more Ant-Man, and so there'll still be some sort of Earth-based stuff, but they're going to take it more cosmic. And yeah, and while they're doing that, I think they should do a Phase 2 on Netflix. Continue making the shows that they're currently doing. They're amazing. It's just, I don't know how many more storylines they can adapt for seasons, or how many more bad guys they can bring in to do seasons with. I mean, they basically threw away the Owl, who, while having an uncanny sort of resemblance to Penguin from Batman's Rogues Gallery, was still a villain that they may possibly have been able to use, but Leland Owsley is now dead, so they can't use him. Purple Man can't come back because he's dead. Yeah, there's a couple of villains that they can't really grab now for Netflix. So in order to remedy that, let's bring in some new heroes, and let's do a Midnight Suns or a Marvel Knights sort of thing. I think having the team name of Midnight Suns, and then having the characters Blade, Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, and then probably like Damon Hellstrom or Brother Voodoo, or one of those, so that you have sort of a supernatural element, as Netflix Phase 2 would be really cool. In fact, I went through a whole heap of different YouTube videos and found sort of the ones that people have sort of been wanting more. So I haven't prepared myself as well as I thought I had for this part. But Sentry has made an appearance twice on the list. He'd be kind of cool for a film, particularly if they go with the theory that I read for bringing the X-Men in without having to explain anything. It's just that in order to protect mutants from the anti-mutant hate that they were getting, Charles Xavier used Cerebro to wipe non-mutants of any knowledge that mutants ever existed, and therefore anyone born after that would be born into a world that doesn't believe they exist or doesn't know that they exist, and then they can just sort of live on Genosha without anyone trying to come and kill them. And then obviously there's some big threat and they have to come back out into the open, and suddenly everyone feels violated or whatever, and that could start off the MCU anti-mutant hate for their violation of privacy or free thought or whatever, which I kind of like, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, they could do a similar thing there with Sentry, in that Sentry doesn't even remember that he used to be Sentry, so maybe it affected him a little bit more than it did everyone else, and he forgot that he himself had superpowers. Then he rediscovers them, but rediscovering them unleashes his dark side, the Void, and he then has to try and bring himself back under control. Although the parallels that could be made between him and Hulk, I mean, you could easily just chuck Hulk in with a cameo role of, you know, how did you learn to control your dark side, the Hulk, and you could go from there. Nova's been a one that's been high on people's lists. Moon Knight, as I said, I think he would be great on Netflix with his own TV show, purely because there's the different personality sides of things, and that sort of thing. Alpha Flight was one that I saw, which is an X-Men group. They work in the comics, they work for a Canadian government group called Department H, which, to me, combined with the stuff they have in Deadpool that connects it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there was another X-Men movie that I thought of, and I found a clear connection the other day. I can't remember what it was now. But anyway, with between the connections that Deadpool has to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they could easily return the favour and have Department H be some Canadian branch of S.H.I.E.L.D., and therefore the H actually stands for Hydra, because they're in plain sight with that. And it could be about how Alpha Flight finds out that Department H is actually the bad guys, and then they've got to try and go against the people that brought them together. Plus, having Northstar, who is one of the first openly gay superheroes on the screen, being openly gay, I think could work really well. We have a saturation at the moment in teen TV shows like Riverdale and Shadowhunters and those sorts of things with openly gay characters, and yet nothing so much in the sci-fi fantasy genre as far as movies are concerned. So having Northstar could be a really good step in that direction. Morbius, the living vampire, was one. I think he would be really cool as sort of like in the same way that like we've had Misty Knight and Colleen Wing and Patsy Walker and Elektra and Frank Castle appear in the main Defenders shows. You could have Morbius appear in Blades, helping him take down vampires, because he's not technically that kind of a vampire. It's some sort of disease or something, so he's not actually undead, but he does need to survive on blood, so that could bring them sort of at odds with each other. There were people saying they wanted to see a Punisher film, which I'm all for, but with Disney running the show, they're not going to let John Bernthal's version come to the big screen, which is unfortunate. So far, the only connection that the movies have with the TV shows is Agent Coulson, and that's ancient history these days. I think it'd be really cool if S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to show up in one of the Avengers films, either Infinity War, which is unlikely, or number 4, which is still kind of could happen. That'd be really cool if Coulson turned up with Agent May, Agent Simmons, Agent Fitz, and Quake, and some of the other Inhumans that would therefore come with her, because I'm pretty sure in that show they call themselves the New Warriors. I could be wrong. People wanting a Namor, the Submariner film, I'm included in that. I think it'd be really cool to see another side of the MCU, not so much cosmically, but subaquatically. Would be really cool. Wonder Man, I'm pretty sure Nathan Fillion had a cameo of sorts in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where his face was on a poster at a movie, like a movie theatre, where he was the character Simon Williams, who is Wonder Man, and honestly, I think he would fill that role really well. And then if you could bring him into an Avengers film, where he would then be able to cause some friction between Wanda and Vision, with the storyline of, in the comics, Wanda wants kids, Vision can't have them. In the comics, Vision was sort of, once he turned against Ultron decided that his purpose was to make sure that Scarlet Witch would never have kids, because her kids would therefore be more powerful than her, and their very existence would tear the fabric of reality, or something like that. It's comics, it's weird. But eventually they sort of become estranged from each other for one reason or another, and she starts up a relationship of sorts with Wonder Man, and I think that'd be really cool to see on film. So I'm all for that. People wanting a Kamala Khan film now that Spider-Man's here, and there's been hints at Miles Morales existing, and the theory that Harley Keener is Sam Alexander, who is a Nova character. You've got sort of these Ultimates who I'm pretty sure are a team in and of themselves. Like, those 3 characters and like 1 or 2 others are a team. And if they were going to do that with like a Young Avengers thing, and you'd have Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel, and you'd have Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and Sam Alexander as Nova, you could bring in Cassie Lang as Stature, and find some other character to just sort of round out the team to 5, then yeah, that'd be kind of cool. While we're going cosmic as well, the Inhumans, Attilan is literally on the moon. I hear the TV show didn't do so well, I haven't seen it myself, but that could be cool to see as a film. You know, have Marvel be like, look, we made a mistake with the TV show, but here we are, with a movie, where it hasn't been sort of like I feel like they just need a fresh slate with the Inhumans, and having the Inhumans become that publicly known, at the same time that they're getting the X-Men as well, is kind of, like, there's suddenly all these superheroes and none of them are registered with the Accords, so there could be the whole, like, political drama that they're alone with that. Then of course, I believe there's been confirmation that we're getting a Black Widow film. I believe, could be wrong there, but I believe that there has been confirmation for that. And yeah, one of the videos I watched basically wanted all the TV shows that are currently being made by Marvel to get their own movies. So there was Cloak and Dagger was on the list, Runaways, The New Warriors, which is getting a show. It's going to have Squirrel Girl and Speedball and a bunch of other really fun characters. They wanted Punisher, they wanted Ghost Rider, who was sort of the Johnny Blaze version anyway, was sort of, he had a cameo role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They wanted Daredevil, and then obviously they wanted to see Deadpool and the X-Men in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So yeah, and obviously if you bring Deadpool into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and have him standing in front of Iron Man and Doctor Strange, he'll be the one to make the Sherlock jokes, because he knows that those actors were also in Sherlock Holmes movies and shows, or he would have been the one to laugh when Everett Ross was sitting in front of Claw, because he would have known those two guys had done the same thing in a Hobbit movie. There's a lot of things you could do with Deadpool in the MCU, so bring him across. That's a definite. There were a whole heap of characters that people thought were unlikely to appear. Super Skrull was one of them. But if we get the Fantastic Four, with the Skrulls being in Captain Marvel, there's a high likelihood that Super Skrull could appear in one or both of those characters' solo films, or maybe they do a team-up thing. I don't know. Either way, it'd be really cool. Silver Surfer, again, would be really cool to see. And obviously, if he's there, he's going to be coming to warn us about Galactus, who, if they wanted to bring him into the MCU, they could just retcon him as Galactus the Destroyer, in a similar way that it's Ego the Living Planet and Eson the Searcher, and therefore they could just say that because of his comic book design that he's a Marvel Cinematic Universe Celestial, and that just instantly does away with, well, why is he a big guy that floats around in space? It's because he's a Celestial. So that could be really cool. And then for Netflix series, I saw one video where it basically said the same as me. They had Blade, they had Ghost Rider, they had Moon Knight, they had Damon Hellstrom, but they also wanted to see Patsy Walker, Hellcat, get her own little spin-off from Jessica Jones. It definitely looks like they're gearing up to bring Hellcat in for season 3 of Jessica Jones, if that gets greenlit and whatnot. If Jessica Jones gets a third season, I am without a doubt wanting to see Hellcat finally get some claws into some bad guys. At the moment, with the last 2 seasons, Patsy Walker is just a beast of a character, so give her claws and let's see what she can do. They wanted to see the Kate Bishop version of Hawkeye, which, honestly, if they wanted to do that, they could make an A-Force film and have females start to fill in the Avengers roles in the movies, which would be kind of cool. that would give you a reason to bring in She-Hulk, which would allow you to put Hulk in a Hulk-based film without it being about Hulk. We'd be able to have a Hawkeye film with Kate Bishop instead of Clint Barton, because he's retired, and you'd be able to have your Black Widow film, and you'd be able to have, what else we got, Captain Marvel, and so on and so forth, and you'd be able to have these characters team up in like a girl power, promoting, you know, the strength of women, which is something that Wonder Woman did amazingly well for. But could you imagine that with like 5 other Wonder Womans teaming up to fight a male villain? Like, that would be cool as well. Like, I know Ares was a male villain, but they sort of sprung him at the last moment. That totally should have been Dr. Poison. I'll go into that in a separate video. But yeah, anyway, the other ones that they wanted to see were White Tiger, who could be brought in through Black Panther, the same way they brought in White Wolf. If you want to see my prediction for that, I did make a video about it. I think in the middle of my Phase 1 films videos. I want to make films, I really do. I just don't have the equipment for it. But yeah, White Tiger could be brought into that, and if they do, I kind of want that to be the male version. Hector Ayala, I think his name is. I could be wrong. Pretty sure that's his name. And then if they were to do it on Netflix, I'd like to see it be the female version, which is his niece. And therefore he could be the same sort of mental vigor that Stick sort of was for Daredevil, except that he could actually give a damn about the person that he's training to fight this war that she needs to fight. Our Daughters of the Dragon series, which would see Colleen Wing and Misty Knight team up. This may see them open up Nightwing Restorations, may see a Heroes for Hire of sorts come together with Luke Cage and Iron Fist instead of an Iron Fist Season 2, since everyone hated that so much. I don't get what's to hate. It's probably because I haven't read Iron Fist comics, but I didn't think the show was that bad. But apparently it was, and I'm just biased because it was a superhero show or something. And then the other one that people wanted to see was a Shang-Chi instead of Iron Fist Season 2. They want to see Shang-Chi. So there's definitely a lot of places that people could, and Marvel can go with all of the stuff that they now have. And yeah. The other thing too is that I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige has said that it won't be in phases after Phase 3, so I don't know if that means no more box sets. If that's the case, I'm kind of upset because, well, I've been collecting them through the box sets so that I have extra like behind the scenes material and stuff. So if they're not going to be releasing them like that anymore, then I'm a little disappointed. It doesn't mean I'm not going to turn up and watch them multiple times while they're still in the cinema. I probably still will, but yeah. Anyway, that's everything. That is all of it. I'm done. My list has been exhausted. So yeah, let me know down in the comment section if I missed anything that you think could happen in Phase 4, or if there's some other character or whatever that you would like to see, let me know. I'm open to new suggestions. I'd like to see what people actually want to see, because you never know, you might get me excited for it, and then I'll help your cause, and we might actually get to see that in our lifetime. But yeah, until next time, guys, keep raising hell.